for another episode in our series, What Your Worship Leader Wishes You Knew. I'm Kim Snyder, professional singer, master vocal coach, and creator of the Voice Club Method. I do things that no one, to my knowledge, else is doing, and that is to let you know how actually to master your own voice, not be reliant on somebody else, and know how you did it. You deserve to know that. Now, if you haven't caught the first few episodes, in episode number 1, which everything else is based on, was the number one thing that worship leaders voted for in this year's survey of what they wish their worship leaders would come back to team with. It's been a really unique year, so they have a really unique list. And at number 1 was naked worship. We go through a lot of stuff in that episode that is going to be really integral for the rest of this series, so please don't miss that one. In episode 2, confidence, I tell you about 2 major artists that you know the names of, probably own the albums of, who approached confidence the wrong way and how that impacted their major career. You're not alone. I gave you some great tips to start working into true confidence in episode 2. We talked about in our 3rd episode, dressed up worship. We took it from naked to dressing it up and taking it to church. It's our public offering. Some really great tips in that one too about what you do once you've done 1 and 2, then how do you make it effective in your body of worship for your people. And today, we're going to get into the nitty gritty because today is vocal control. It's knowing that a note that you sing will show up when you open your mouth. This has happened to me so much of my life before I got it together. I would go, well, that note came out in practice. I sure hope it's there for me when I open my mouth, now that it's time. And vibrato. What do you do if you don't have one? What if you have one? It's getting out of control. And I've got a special little bit of insight on ages of worship singers and leaders. Some of you are very interested about that. I know what I found out was a shocker. I'm also going to give you what's missing in most singers and a vocal quick win tip that will fix it all. We're also going to take those 2 concepts of vocal control, meaning stability and reliability when we open our mouth, and vibrato control, and we're going to put them into a song. We're going to put them into What a Wonderful Name It Is today, and I'm going to show you how I mark things to improve those things. All right? As a vocal coach, I usually in the fall will get a chance to go around to a few churches and do what I do, free vocal boot camps. This is to educate singers about what their vocal anatomy can really do that other people just haven't had the opportunity to study like I've had in my very, very incredibly unique vocal education, which you'll know if you've listened to the other episodes. When I talk about worship, I think about all the teams I've been on, the teams I've been blessed to lead, the groups of singers I've been blessed to go in and train up in churches. And it has been such an impact on my life. When we talked about naked worship in episode 1, that's what makes it personally fulfilling to go out and sing worship. And when we talked about our public worship in our last episode, being involved in that corporate experience is so incredibly life-changingly fulfilling. If you've never felt that before, it's because some really, what I believe to be simple obstacles are in the way. And I'm hoping to remove some of those for you today, get you to think about things in a totally new way and start moving forward because God designed your voice to be unique. He designed it to sing and sing well. He designed you for musical worship. And his goal for you in musical worship wasn't to be the best singer, although you definitely can improve greatly, but it was to be able to be free to bring your naked worship into that corporate place and experience that among other believers. But there are so many things, especially today. I think the more we have technology, the more obstacles we find are in our way, just simply because we don't understand the place of everything. So we make everything too important. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do that. Click the bell. It'll tell you when the next video posts. Let's kick it off with reliable notes. Who doesn't want a reliable note? I hear so many times that I know some of you in the chat are in this situation. You think, well, I love to sing. I really wish I could be on the team, but I'm not a good singer, so I'm going to play keyboard. I'm going to go play drums. Or maybe I'm just going to bow out of the worship team or never even volunteer in the first place. I hope a lot of non-volunteers are watching this. Oh, I hope so much. Comment if you are. I want to know. Because the thing is, your voice is supposed to be worshiping. Now, some musicians think, well, yeah, but I'll play my instrument and I'll just worship back here where no one can hear me off mic. But trust me, your voice can do just as much. It's just removing obstacles. We talked a lot about the vocal machine yesterday and how it functions. It's stuff you haven't heard anywhere else, and you won't. Sometimes we'll go to sing a song and you open your mouth, and you practice this hundreds of times in some cases. You open your mouth and all of a sudden this squeaky little wobbly little wimpy thing just kind of fluffles out and it disappears. It is so incredibly embarrassing, makes you unconfident, which leads to stage fright, which leads to all the things we talked about in the last episode, right? Unreliable notes. In other words, opening your mouth and not being confident, 100% sure what you know is going to come out of your mouth is the number one reason for vocal unconfidentness. Yeah, I made it up. Why not? Put it in with slang. I'll just add it to the Wikipedia. It is the number one reason really good singers back out of the worship team. I have known in my life so many phenomenal singers that are believers. And I'll ask them, oh, are you serving in your church? What are you doing in your team? And they'll say, oh, I don't do worship. And I'm like, why not? And their answer is usually some connection to this. They don't understand why, but their voice is not as good as it is when they sing other kinds of music. Therefore, when they get into worship, they feel like a failure. And then they feel like, well, people know that I can sing. And if I sing like that in church, it's going to be humiliating. And so they'll just back out. We have incredible singers in almost every church in the country, in the world, that are great, that will not step up for worship for this reason. If you've never sung outside of your shower because you're unconfident, this will affect you. If you've been singing professionally your entire life, but you have that experience in church, one of the reasons is what we talked about in episode 2 and 3, why worship music is so much more difficult to sing than any other genre. There's a reason we don't sound as good. The problem is we get a lot of volunteer singers that haven't really sung maybe a lot of places in church, and they think that because it's hard, it's their fault. I don't have the skill. I don't have the talent. But that is simply not true, okay? Vocal reliability, stability, knowing when your voice is going to warble or not, what it's going to do, this is at the root of being able to be free to worship. It is the number one obstacle. It's when notes don't get strong, when you remember, we'll go to the bridge and everybody sing powerfully. You go for this big note, it comes out and then it just it weakens out. And it's like somebody just knocked you out at the knees. It's when you're supposed to start with that really worshipful song. That has happened to me on mic. I cannot tell you how many times. And I close my eyes and I'm saying this prayer, oh, Jesus, please tell me they didn't hear that. You know they did. Ugh. Anyway, we think about it way more than anyone else does, so you should know that. It is not your voice's fault. Number one thing I hope you do through this whole series, besides naked worship, which is the most important thing. Second thing I wish you would do is stop blaming your voice. God created your voice just like he created your legs, your eyelashes, all of the beautiful parts of your body. He created them that way on purpose. He created your voice to work. Unless there is a physical problem in your inner ear or in the vocal mechanism or somewhere there around that you would know about, it would be 2% of the population that has something that means they cannot, for those physical reasons, learn to sing well. With the exception of those things, every voice can learn to sing well. I have conferred with the number one singer's vocal surgeon in the world. He said they haven't had a chance to test it because, of course, why are they going to test that? Where's the money to come for that testing? But he said it makes absolute sense that unless you have a provable physical abnormality, so you've got what it takes. It's not your voice's fault. It's not a lack of talent. It's just what we have put in our system, the wrenches we've thrown in. And unfortunately, most of the advice we get as singers, which is the reason I do this, is throwing a wrench in the system. Almost everything throws a wrench, not because they mean to or they're just too stupid to learn. They're wonderful, well-meaning, very educated people. But nobody in the singing world is studying what we know in current medical science about the voice. And I found that not even vocal surgeons, until you get to the top, the people who work with professional singers, they haven't even bothered to do the research of what's available to know what to tell you to do as a singer. In October, I'm going to tell you what to do when you think you have to go to the doctor about your voice, who not to listen to. I learned the hard way how little everybody knows. Shocking. I'm going to tell you about that in October series, okay? The voice's job is not the vocal cord's job. Vocal cords are like eyelashes. They move because of the muscles that move the eyelids. Vocal cords are the same thing. They're just tiny little tissues. They're as thin as tissue paper, except they're slimy. They're the length, your vocal cords are the length of your thumbnail bed, the pink part. So you can look at your thumb at any age and know exactly how long your vocal cords are. You're like, those tiny, and they're super thin, right? Even the fat ones are thin. And they flutter so fast that we still do not have the technology to capture the vocal cords mid-flutter. That's how fast they go. They're crazy moving, but guess what makes them move? Like you could flutter your eyelashes. But the eyelashes aren't doing the work. The muscles behind the eyelids do. Your vocal muscles, which you don't see, even when they put the thing down your throat and say, ooh, look, the vocal cords are moving. That must be everything, right? No. What you can't see is behind them are the big muscles, and they're doing all the work. Everything that stabilizes a note, everything that is responsible for the pitch of a note, the strength, the ability to get strong and soft at will, go into vibrato, come out of vibrato, everything that we want the voice to do is the function of the vocal muscle. It's the vocal muscle's job. What? Now, you've got vocal muscle. I've got vocal muscle, even though mine is damaged and full of scar tissue, thanks to doctors. I spend the rest of my life going to doctors. I just think the irony is so large there. You say, well, I've got vocal muscle. Why doesn't my voice do what it needs if it has everything it needs? If you're right, your voice has everything it needs. But like I look at my body, especially after septic shock, I lost 50 pounds in 4 weeks when I almost died. And when I came out of the hospital, I could see my bones and my skin was just melting off of it. Did I have muscle? I absolutely did. But it was absolutely lethargic. It couldn't do anything. Now, I've had an opportunity to experience what probably no other singer ever will, and so far no other singer in written history has. And that is having to repair a voice when you literally have no muscle mass in your entire body, including your vocal muscles. So I can tell you firsthand experience that you got a whole lot more vocal muscle, and it's a lot more conditioned than mine was when the second time I had to rebuild my voice. But on average, vocal muscle is not doing what it needs to do. It's not strong, flexible, coordinated, the things that we need to make our notes stable and our vibrato do what we want it to do when we want it to do. It doesn't do that, not because doesn't have the potential, not because you haven't done a 2-hour singing lesson. It's not about how much you sing that will build that vocal muscle. I could walk around the park 100 times and I'm not going to be ready for the Olympics. It's about knowing what the muscle needs to complete the task and it being able to be trained specifically, which I have found takes very little time if you do it right, if you just get to the point of things. It's like me learning to cook. I'm happy to throw salt in there. I don't want to measure it. I just know it needs salt. It needs sugar. It needs chocolate. Everything needs chocolate chips. And coffee. Everything. You can smoke meat with it. It's real. But that doesn't mean that that's the best way to make something. So just know, don't believe what you've heard. Okay, so you're saying, okay, my muscle needs the specific, work so that it knows what to do and blah, blah, blah. Great. Well, then shouldn't it be doing something? Because it's there and it's muscle. And I've been singing a lot, so it knows singing, the pattern of singing. Probably not, and here's why. Even if we can train the vocal muscle, unless we have the brain on board, the vocal muscle doesn't know what to do because guess what? It gets its orders from the brain. When we understand the way our body works and the order in which the information goes, it's like, oh, that makes sense. And it makes sense why the things you've tried haven't worked. Not your voice's fault. It's honestly not the fault of the people that have told you that. There's just no information. And really, honestly, no one had ever had the experience that I'd had to find these things out. The information we put in our brain tells the vocal muscle what it's allowed to do. It sets the expectation. It says, okay, now sing this loud like you did before. And the vocal muscle goes, okay, how? What do you want me to do? Vocal muscle's capable. It's kind of like if you were in a team of weightlifters and you were going to a competition, but you can do a lot of things, but you're waiting for your coach to say what's appropriate for that competition. The voice is the same way. It's saying, all right, I'm singing worship music. What are the rules that I need to follow? The brain will then throw out every singing tip you've ever heard, everything that you've thought about but not really questioned and not solidified. It has a database of way too much stuff. A lot of it conflicting advice. I've done a lot of deep research into why other people are not teaching certain things. and found out how messed up it is. From the speech-based movement, we hear things like chest voice and head voice, which actually come from science, and mix. But I found in my research that there are at least 4 completely different definitions of what mix is, and most of them are completely oppositional to the others. What are we supposed to do with that? The number one thing we have to do is understand how the body creates sound, because that will knock a lot of that stuff out. You'll be like, well, if food doesn't go down my windpipe and vice versa, I can rule that one out. So the answer to everything is understanding the way our body works and then getting what it needs to do the task. Everything we put in our head about how to reach a note, hit a note, is probably a billion things. You'll have to mention in the comments some of the things you've done. What do you do to get a reliable note to come out? And how often does it fail you? I was being paid as a singer, and sometimes I'd open my mouth and I'd be like, oh, here's hoping. I would get to worship on Sunday morning, and it was hard for me. I thought about quitting a couple times just because I didn't feel as successful, as good of a singer when I sang worship music. Now I understand there's a reason why it's hard, and we can overcome it. What we put in our brain will tell the muscle the rules. How we train the vocal muscle will determine what the vocal muscle can do once it gets the rules from the brain. Our brain database is what causes our vocal muscle to weaken physically, because if the brain says, you don't need this, you don't need that, you don't need to go there, you just have to sing this song 70 times over and then you'll be good, then the vocal muscle will do that. It's looking for the information from our brain. That's why what we listen to, what we believe, what we prove, and what we measure in our voices. Did you know that all vocal instruction is measurable physically? It is, and we should be doing that. We should be questioning it just like it's the latest fad diet, everything you read, and say, does that measure up with the way God created my body to make sound? All right, the longer we run in that database of old stuff, and I did all that training, all that stuff for 20 years, the more unreliable our voice becomes. If you feel like you're a good singer, and I mean, I've sung long enough, I feel pretty comfortable in my voice. I feel like I could go sing stuff, there's always things to improve. But the longer I went with all that, adding new information to old information, it was this constant fear in the back of my head. I know I can go sing this. I was a power singer. I can hit big, powerful notes. But I know if I went from strong to soft, I would probably lose that note. And I know my biggest fear was starting on a soft word on a worship song, because it's just like I couldn't figure out how to get it to happen. And it was just happenstance. And then you just learn tricks to make people not notice you're doing it. No, I haven't done that. Just saying. I'm going to go through the what and the why of reliable notes and vibrato, and then I'm going to show you in what a beautiful name it is, how I would chart to improve these things, okay? Let's talk about vibrato. What's the problem with vibrato? Vibrato is a big thing in the worship community because it is the number one thing that can destroy a team's blend. And what does everybody want on a team? Blend. It's like, oh, if we could just blend, right? If our vibrato shows up when we don't expect it to, or it goes places we didn't ask it to, did you know that you are supposed to be able to control that? You can. If that happens, it completely, immediately destroys the blend of your team. It is the number one reason for age requirements on worship team. There are other reasons, and I'm going to tell you a story in just a second about what I found out the shockingly weird way about that, vibrato and ageism. It is not having vibrato that affects when you go to, like, you'll go sing a solo and you're like, I blend so beautifully and I'm so happy with that. And they'll say, bring this solo. Okay, well, when you do that, add a little something to it. And just so you know, music terms mean different things to different people too. So just let yourself off the hook there. Use the terms that mean something to you. But when someone says something you don't understand, make your best guess and move on. Don't feel like you don't know anything. I worked with phenomenal musicians that had multiple degrees in their skill. I never had a degree, but I was a professional forever. And I was always feeling like I was the stupid one and I should keep my mouth shut. Now what I realize is I know now what they were talking about. And they were just talking about something that wouldn't have made sense to me the way I approached music anyway. And I had my own word for it. I didn't know they were the same thing. So let yourself off the hook with those things. We can get and we can control vibrato. If you've got one that's warbling, we can take care of that. Why does vibrato happen? We talked about this actually quite a bit in episode 2. So I'm going to kind of move on from where we are on that. The why of vibrato. How does that function anatomically? Let's pretend these are our vocal cords. When we have bottom notes, the thick part is down here. Ah, I'm getting low today. And as they zip up to go up, they thin out. They zip and thin out. And that's how they do that. Vibrato requires a very specific action. In order for vibrato to happen, the vocal cord on whichever note, what note is it? Low notes are here, higher notes are middle notes, and we get all the way to high notes. But in the connection of those vocal cords, which only happen because the muscles behind the groups of muscles are determining where to squeeze to make those vocal cords come together. In order for vibrato to happen, the vocal cords need to be squeezed by the muscle enough to touch, but barely. It needs to just very, very lightly be touching on the vocal cord, wherever that note is. Wherever those cords come together, it has to really lightly hold. And what happens is, as the air resists that light pressure, you get that little wiggle. That's what happens. Why do we not have vibrato sometimes? Because the muscle doesn't know what to do, and it's just like, I got to get that note. Light cord closure never happens. It can't happen. So you're like, well, I just don't have a vibrato. You're right now, but you can have one. Everybody has in their anatomy what you need. I can't tell you how many times I've had people join my, I have a vocal repair clinic, and they will come in and I'll do an assessment, because usually I find out at the assessment, they think they're damaged and they're not. So we'll do the assessment and I'll say, you don't have damage. Here's what's going on. Ask me anytime in our group. Go to thevoiceclub.com. There's a new community group. You can join there and then ask me any question anytime. Okay. If you don't have vibrato, it's because the muscles aren't sure how to squeeze, when to squeeze to enable that light cord closure to happen so the wiggle can happen. Why don't they? Because the brain has wrenches in it and it's sending the wrong information to the vocal cords. What happens then in the voice when we have a vibrato that gets out of control? Same thing, opposite side. Okay. Vocal muscle does what it does, but either the vocal muscle is too weak, which happens as we age, by the way, or it's just it's getting the wrong information, that it is choosing to not squeeze the muscle enough for there even to be good enough cord closure to happen that wiggle. So the vocal cords like get this close, but not touching, not barely touching. We have the muscle that's trying too hard, squeezes out your vibrato. Not enough muscle, gets close, but the warble is bigger. That's why the warble gets bigger, we think, as we age. Okay, I'm going to tell you my story about vibrato in an audition of a worship team. Is that okay? I've been on the other side of the table for the people who audition the worship singers when you have especially the big fall kickoffs. And this happened to be in a mega church I was in, and I was on the other side. And at that time, I was 40 something at the time. And the worship leader was much younger than me, I have no problem with that. I was a worship leader when I was young, but we had leaders of all the different ministries that used singers. And I and the worship leader were from the A team, the Sunday morning people. So we went over the criteria. And this is what I said to you singers too in one of the other episodes. It's hard to, but try not to take things that you hear from your worship leader personally, because most of it is coming through the filter of every church will in some way communicate or hint, but not communicate clearly at what kind of sound they want, what kind of look they want. Every church is extremely unique in this. They filter in some way, shape, or form, sometimes very clearly, sometimes very poorly, to their worship leader, what they want that person to do to put it into action. And that person sometimes very clearly knows what they have to do to make it happen, but many times guesses how to make that kind of opaque picture come true in the worship team. So a lot of times when we ask our worship leaders something, when they look like this and they're looking around, not looking at you, they're thinking about, how do I make this happen for my job, what I'm supposed to be doing? How do I put this into practice? Not, oh no, this person is asking me again, I can't stand their voice, but that's the way we take it, right? Okay. So I'm on the other side of the table. Before everyone comes in, we're going over kind of the church direction. And then the worship leader went down exactly what the board said, and then what he was going to put into practice to make that happen in a functional way through these auditions. It was very clear-cut, very well managed. And they were talking about who we don't want on worship team. These conversations happen. By the way, most of the time it's not about, we don't want this person, we don't want that. It's about what we can't have that will disrupt what we've just been told we need to have. I was surprised to find on leadership the other side, it's really not nearly as personal a thing as I thought it was as a singer. Gave me hope. We are going down the list of what we cannot have in the worship team People know that our voice tends to get wobblier as we age, and that a wobbly vibrato or a vibrato that is just present when we ask it not to be, just as bad, honestly, to the blend. We can't have that because we all want blend. That's the goal. So there's always this opinion that we need to make sure that we have people that either don't have a vibrato or know how to control it. There is an assumption that there should be an age cutoff, or at least an age consideration in the worship team, because those people are not functionally able to control their vibrato, because that has been worship leaders' experience. They don't know anyone over a certain age that could control anything. And it happened to be this worship leader's experience. He said, okay, so we can't have that. We need to make sure that we have a really great blend. So we're not going to accept anyone over 40. We're not going to accept anyone that, then he went down this list, and I couldn't remember the rest of the list because I heard over 40. And then I went, dude. And I waited for him to finish. And I said, okay, so why are we not accepting anyone over 40? And a lot of us that get over 40, we think it's because we don't look good enough. We don't look young enough. We don't look hip enough. And a lot of churches want to present that younger look. There are people all the way into their 80s that look hip. I'm just saying. It has to do with the sound and their assumptions based on their experience. So I waited for him to finish, and I said, why are we not having anyone over 40? He goes, oh, because we have to have blend. And it just can't happen after 40. And I said, do you know how old I am? He goes, no, but what does it matter? We got to move on. I said, I'm 45. Do I need to step down? And he was like, literally. It's like I'm the first person he's met that doesn't have a vibrato problem. Here's the thing. I'm not special. It's just that if the brain knows what to send the signals to the vocal anatomy, the vocal muscle knows how to do it, it will do it at any age. Did you know? Bob Hope's wife was training her voice, last I heard, up to 98 years of age. And before she was vocal training, her vibrato was very wide, like we think of in a senior citizen, but she got great muscle control. She had one of the top coaches in the world, and she gained complete control over that vibrato. I've worked with my mother as she's home now, and she's been working from home for many years and not talking. And when we don't talk for a long time, as what happened with me through my medical recovery when I couldn't talk for sometimes on and off for years, then the vocal muscle weakens. So we just need to wake it up, we need to build it, and then we need to teach it how to do vibrato. By the way, vibrato is not, like I said, you can have it, you cannot have it. It is not part of the voice. It is something that is an add-on to technique is the machine. It's how the machine needs to run to go smoothly, to give you your absolute vocal potential, and to not have any health problems, for singing to be easy and good, as that's what your vocal machine does. Anything we do on top of that we add to make music fun or sparkly or diamond-y is a bells and whistle. And vibrato is a bells and whistle. Those are styling tools. It's trills. It's even dynamics. It's anything that the machine doesn't need to do its job, but can be added on or cool. In episode 2, I told you what the one styling tool is that will put a wrench in your system. There is one that can be done healthy and can be a styling tool and is great. A lot of people use it. Most people do it incorrectly, and that will cause the anatomy not to be able to function correctly. It will cause a weakness in certain areas of the muscle, and it will cause problems for your range. Missing notes, great singer, probably happened to you. Okay? In the vocal quick win tip today, I've got an exercise that will help you to get stability and to test your vibrato. Whether you don't have one, you have one. To feel. We have to feel what our voice is doing. If you can feel it, you can correct it before it comes out of your mouth. No joke. It's crazy. Should we put this into practice? I'm going to try to put my second camera on. Let's do our reliable notes first. I picked 2 different colors because, as I told you, I like to make things different. If I can just scan the lyrics and know where my problem areas are, then I'm not focused on the lyrics, which makes me not dependent on a monitor. So I prefer to just make visual marks, so I only have to glance really quick. We talked about this in episode 2, why worship music is so hard. So I'm just going to do a quick recap. Anything that starts with a very soft consonant, and the softest ones are the ones that we use all the time in worship, W, F, H is the worst, L, things like that, require less muscle to come to the game, therefore make it harder if your muscle doesn't know what it's doing. Guess what we have? We have a U right at the beginning. The first word, let me rephrase that. The first consonant of the first thing you say in the phrase, as long as it lasts till you take a breath again, because when you take a breath, your vocal cords have to reset. That means your vocal muscle opens them and then resets again. The first thing we say is going to determine how much muscle comes to the game, and it should stay there until we take a breath again. We have a Y on you. You were the Word at the beginning, one with God, the Lord Most High. But we sing this with a W. You were. Why? We need airy. Oh my goodness. So we really sing this like it were a W. You were, because we want it quiet. I want you to think about breathy as opposite from volume. If you have a stereo and you're going to turn the volume down, it doesn't get breathier. It's really essential that you go back and listen to the thing that I said in episode 2 about breathy, why it's done almost always incorrectly in a way that's bad for the voice and that it can be done correctly, but I'm going to assume everybody's worst habits here that I've seen on worship teams. You were the Word. Guess what? We have a W here. You were the Word at the beginning. G is the most percussive consonant we can have. G, g, g. And guess what? We're even falling out of breath by here. Guess what? That's because we opened our vocal muscle right here. And then the air just spilt out this whole sentence. And guess what that creates? Vocal instability. Show you a miracle of science here, erasable pens. It's my favorite thing in the world because I love to color and I love to erase. Okay, so let's do what this actually gives you a really good letter right here. It's Y. Yeah. When in doubt, say the letter by itself. Yeah. Yeah does not go whew, right? Yes, it is a terrible note. You. When we say you, we don't go, how are you today? We say, how are you? You. You were the Word in the beginning. If we will just say, yeah, you were the Word in the beginning. Do you see how much more strength that gives the whole line? We don't even have to worry about this W. That W would be a weakness, but this, if I'm going to breathe here, and it depends where you breathe. This is why I like to sing as many lines as I can until I take a breath, because you keep whatever you gained. It's like putting gas in the tank. This first consonant is where you put your gas in your tank till you breathe again. Then you got to fill up. Okay? You were the Word at the beginning. Now, if I were learning to do this process, getting a big yeah is going to be a process because I'm not used to it. I'm used to W. So then I would say, guess what I have in here? This one might go weak, but guess what? When I say this word by itself, wah, it's not weak. It's not WH, it's W, and W is a solid one. We say, you were the Word. We talked about this a little bit in episode 2. I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing there because I told you that. If I need a second place to what I call press in, it just means get a little creaky, get a little whiny. What it functionally does is causes your vocal muscle to wah. It causes your vocal muscles to flex when we get a little cry, a little any of those things. In the Voice Club method, I've determined that there are 4 types of chord closure so that we can nail down and apply to any song at any time which one is most appropriate and get us there fastest. My goal is to sing better faster, not to think about it for 10 years. You were the Word at the beginning. Now that sounds a little clunky. If I'm finding that this sentence is weak when I'm singing it, I'm going to look at both of those as my options. I'm going to probably keep them both underlined. Now, am I going to sing, you were the Word at the... No, I'm not going to sing like that. I'm going to practice like that. And once my Y gets solid enough, I'm going to leave this on my lyrics. You were the Word at the beginning. I would not breathe here because, again, you keep your power when you keep going on the same gas tank. But I'm going to put a breath here because everybody else does it. Now we have one with God, right? If actually it's a WH. H is your enemy. And whenever we put a WH in front of something, it becomes weak. H is weak. One with God, the Lord Most High. We have an L. That's a soft one. We have an H. H is our enemy. Let's get the H out of there. That's what I always say. We got a perfectly good one. One with God, the Lord Most High. Do you see anything else in this line? I said there is a consonant that is you can make the biggest squeeze in your muscle. G is a power consonant. If I feel it starting weak, I'm going to dig into my G. One with God, my Lord Most High. Try that sentence. Start with a WH, one with, and then press into the G. Those who are here, do it right now. One with God, the Lord Most High. In any key that's comfortable for you. Key doesn't matter. What you'll hear is that it's weak in the beginning and then it gets stronger and you feel like you don't run out of air. Chord closure, baby. It's all about the muscle. One with God, the Lord Most High. If we have enough muscle squeeze on the first consonant in that road trip, then this L doesn't matter, this H doesn't matter, because we got gas. We're pressing on the gas. We're good, right? Let's say we're going to breathe here because everyone does. Your hidden glory in creation. Because we have to do breathy, right? No, it's a Y. Come on. Yeah. Your hidden glory in creation. When I finish this verse, I'll tell you how we make this worshipful and breathy, okay? Now revealed in you are Christ. No. Now revealed in you. We have double one if we want it. In our Christ. All right. Now I'm going through this quickly for time, but once you will underline the thing that you need to, I call it digging into, but it's the percussive sound that you do it a little bit more like you say it. Yeah, one, your, now, n. This actual sound, yeah, one, it's kind of hard to make that sound apart, but yeah, n, okay? If it starts the way we do it, but a little bit bigger than we do it in speech, your gas tank will last all the way until you breathe. Let's pretend we're there, okay? Now, okay, you're like, great, I can sing this first verse now with a lot more power, but they asked me to sing it all breathy. What am I gonna do? Do not put WHs anywhere. Never, ever put an H in there. Get the H out of there. What we want to do is, just like your stereo, you're going to turn down the volume. Volume and power are literally two distinctively different things in the anatomy. We're just going to turn down the volume, not back off. If we back off, we put a WH in front. That WH makes us weak. H makes us very weak. Okay? So we're just going to, you were the word at the beginning, one with God, the Lord Most High. I cheated. I didn't breathe, so it was super easy. But now I'm going to turn down the volume. You were the. As soon as you feel it go to Hugh, you know you've gone too far. See if you can do it that quiet, but with a go, yeah. You were. Tiny whiny is what I call it. You were the word at the beginning, one with God, the Lord Most High. Okay, so it's turning down the volume. Now I'm going to tell you, just because you're here and you deserve to know, what the way is that you bring breathy in right. And I'm going to tell you, before I tell you what it is, that it is extremely hard and most of the time impossible unless the rest of your vocal muscle is not getting wrong information from your brain. We want to put an H in front of everything to make it airy. The H, get it out of there. The H never leads anything. H means we have no cord closure. If we have no cord closure, that means your muscle's on vacation and no one told it was time to work. In vocal styling, when we do it correctly, H can come at the end anytime. You were, so volume down. You were the word at the beginning. That's how functionally it happens. There you go. I'll probably cut that out of the edited one. Only people who are alive are going to get that tip. It's hard, but that's the way you do it right without messing up your voice. Okay, so we've marked for stability. We have marked where the place it is that is undermining your stability. What's undermining it? WH or H. Always. No joke, right? So we're going to underline these. And when I go back and practice this, I know that this orangish red line means this is how to make sure this line is stable. Oh, guess what we have here? Enemy. Okay, let's see what else is in here. TH, enemy. WH. We got some bombs coming up. Okay, what are we going to do about that? They're there. We have to sing them. They're part of the word. No, we don't. H is our enemy. Soft consonants will undermine our stability and make us feel like a failure, and we'll never know what's coming out of our mouth. So let's fix them. What a beautiful name it is. What a beautiful name it is. Whenever a line repeats, I just put ×2 because I like to have everything on one sheet. So that's what that's there for. If we go, what? We don't say, what are you doing? We say, what are you doing? What? So we ignore the H. W. What a beautiful name it is. Now I'm giving you a super big creak to make a big example. In worship, it's a tiny whiny. What a beautiful name it is. What a beautiful name it is. Okay. W. So I'm gonna X out my H and I'm gonna put W. That reminds me, do not go out WH on me. Don't do it. If we were to add that H in there, what a beautiful, usually by the middle of beautiful, we're out of breath and we feel like we're not a singer, right? But we have another one that's really good. This is a really good one to dig into. What a beautiful name it is. What a beautiful name it is. N is na. If you go, what? Na. Those are with me right now. And when you're watching this, do this. Go, what? Na. There's one that's easier to make bigger than the other, and it's the N. I call those ones that are easier to dig into. These are kind of your saviors. So, not literally, you know what I mean? So when I'm learning, and W is really hard to get a what on because I've been doing WH my entire life, I know that I'll probably underline N because that will give me an extra boost to my stability. What a beautiful, so if I go, what a beautiful name it is, I can regain my gas right there. That's the gas pedal, okay? If I'm good at my W and I've been doing it a while, I only need the W. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. All right, the. We don't say like that. We don't say THWU. We say, here we go. I'm writing sideways. THWU. It looks sideways. The. That's kind of how we say it in music. The. And guess where it is? So we're going to look at the first consonant. Vocal muscle closes on consonant. It's not the T because t is too quick. Muscle can't really grip on that. H is our enemy. So let's say they're both unusable. Guess where the vocal muscle can dig in? The E. We're not going to go, E name of Jesus. We're going to make the TH as little as humanly possible. And when you're practicing, I'd almost leave it out. And I would just make the sound of this, which in this word is a UGH. A name of Jesus Christ, my King. Same way we say A. A name of Jesus. And then I would put a teeny little TH. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. And I'm not meaning to skip over the fact that this takes a lot of practice because your entire life probably you've been practicing it the other way. And your database in your brain, this is why I say we do have to do a clean install when I train people, because the database, the new information I'm giving you is completely in opposition to everything that's in your brain right now. Everything everyone else has said. So your brain is going to try to send both messages to your vocal cords. And your anatomy doesn't have time to pick out which is the newest advice when you're singing. It just doesn't. So stop thinking about airy. Put airy in last. H goes at the end. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. And then we've already done this. We know H is our enemy. But wah is good. We can dig into that. What a beautiful name it is. Nothing compares to this. Now, if I breathe and I say nothing, we got a good end there. Nothing compares to this. Nutter butter. Nah. Okay? What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus. Okay, I got the wrong line there, but you know what it is. So far, is this making sense, guys? I'm going to put these notes on. There's a reason. I usually make 2 copies. Now, when I work with worship leaders, those are doing a lot of solos, and people that are, really spending a lot of time practicing, we can cut down your rehearsal time usually to 1/4 of the time by doing this process. I usually have 2 sheets. I'll make all my first starter notes. And then by the time I've gone through this and I've gotten better, I make a clean copy and I only mark the absolute minimum things because you don't want your brain looking at 500 marks on your lyrics. Okay. So let's go really quickly through the second verse, and then we're going to attack vibrato in this song. You didn't want heaven without us. H is our enemy, but we have a Y. Yeah. You didn't want heaven without us. Now, when you're starting, this is going to want to go, You didn't want heaven without us. You're like, I just need a bigger breath. No, you don't. You need to close the vocal muscles so they can do their job. They just went on lunch break and too soon. So guess what? I will let my brain know by making this symbol that the H is no longer a priority. Get that out of there. And then I'm going to make the sound of the next consonant, which would be, well, technically not a consonant, but the next sound would be eh, eh. Almost like an E and an H. You didn't want heaven without us. Now I'm showing you two different things at once. Is this a phonetic change? And some people will say this word like that. And that is most of the time a quick fix. But it doesn't apply to that word and every note of every song. So it's really extremely limited for a quick fix. It only applies to that one part of that one word and that one song and that one key. By the way, the problems you have are going to be determined not only by the consonants, it's going to be determined by the direction of the notes, and it's going to be determined by the key that you sing in. How is that for complex? But by simpling it down to only giving your brain one new set of information for rules, it doesn't matter. You can sing this song. All of you who are not thinking of yourself as great singers, by the way, I know a lot of great singers that don't think of themselves as great singers. So I know a lot of so-so singers that think of themselves as great singers. They just haven't sung enough to know that it's harder than that. That's all that is. But just these simple things will make your voice so much more stable. Stability is a absolute mandatory part of confidence. Because if your voice doesn't do what you ask it to do, you have no control and then you blame your voice. Then it just doesn't happen, okay? Okay, somebody tried this. I got a yes, yes, yes. All right. You didn't want heaven without us. Okay, so here's a unique, this is why I like to run through lyrics in a song. We got, so Jesus, you brought heaven down. Okay, so is a throwaway. If you some of you are musicians. So Jesus, really Jesus, right? If you were singing and worshiping, your eyes closed, forgot to look up, you'd probably say, Jesus, you, forget the so. I like to do this for myself. When I don't know a song, I'll put parentheses around it. Like that's a throwaway. It's not really important. I mean, can we dig into that? The S, we can't. It's too short. We can go, so Jesus. But I'm thinking about me. And I'm thinking, sometime I'm going to forget the so. Let's make a backup. And I say, J, 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 J. That'll work. So Jesus, you brought heaven down. We have a Y too in there, right? B, if you go B, 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 not as good as N or G. So, not important enough. Let's find the biggest ones. Now, if I am one of those by the bookers, which I've never been, and I'm singing so every time, maybe because I'm leading worship and I have to be the example, then so is every time, then I pick O. You see why this changes depending on the choices you make as a singer. But understanding what undermines you, which is H. H, anything with H or a very soft consonant like a TH, L, 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 anything that doesn't cause the vocal muscle to squeeze really good, wah, that's what happens with vocal muscle. La, la does that, but G, G does that with your vocal muscle. That is what determines the stability in your notes. So Jesus, I went down a key. My brain must want me to sing it. So Jesus, you brought heaven down. My sin was great, your love was greater. Anyone have a guess? My sin. It's going to be one of the first ones. What can we dig into? Yep, my sin was great. Your love was greater. Now, I will tell you, when I start with somebody who is just starting to clean their entire brain system and do a reboot, I give them extra crutches to have extra places, because sometimes your old data will start singing this and you see it, but guess what? Your voice is going to do it the old way when you're performing. And you're like, what the what? I worked on this. It's because you have all that old stuff still in your database. That's exactly why it happens. It's the only reason it can happen. So you're like, oh no, I'm singing and I missed that. Then I give them a, we'll catch up here. There's another one. Usually it's in the middle of the line someplace. My sin was great. Your love was greater. So if you want to find two for yourself, it's usually halfway through. You look for another good place where you can go, yeah, ma, g. See what other ones are good. Ma, na are great. Just make those sounds phonetically and see how big you can make them, and you'll see which ones are easiest. Okay? What could separate? Oh, man, no. Don't do that to me, H. You don't belong in there. It's a whoa. What could separate us now? Not always in the middle of the sentence. You can't dig in anywhere and separate. We could, but it's going to be awkward. Separate. There's like 5 places I could find, but let's not go that deep. What could separate us now? The reason I made this choice too is because of the direction of the notes. If we're doing that, it makes it harder. So I'm thinking way ahead. I'm thinking about the direction of the notes, how the vocal anatomy handles the direction of notes, how your voice will handle it in the key that you're in. And you're like, well, I can never do all that. That's okay. That's why people come to me. You're not supposed to be able to do that. But at the very beginning, you can do powerful things with your voice just by remembering H is your enemy. Your voice is not unstable. H is undermining it. H requires the vocal muscles who need to touch together with the vocal cords in between. It causes them to do this. And if your brain tells your vocal muscle to do this, your vocal anatomy cannot make a reliable, concrete, solid sound. It physically cannot happen in your body. Okay? Not your voice's fault. What a wonderful name it is. Okay, that's as far as we're going to go. We're going to leave the red on there, and we're going to go to vibrato. I hope this is helpful. Let me know in the comments if it is. Because I teach singers, and I always take them to a really advanced level, find out where they are, and we find as fast as we can to get that brain reprogrammed. My goal is not to get other people's information out of there. My goal is to delete the database, because if we add, it's been my experience consistently, if we add anything that's already in your database, even if it is a speech-based model, and I give you my tips, which are based on making the anatomy, making the brain send only the minimum information to the vocal muscle, making sure the vocal muscle is completely in shape and ready to do it, and make it happen the fastest in just a split bit of a second, then we need to have less information in that database. It's got to be the right information. Vocal muscle has to be ready. And I've just worked 10 years on making that really fast and efficient. So I will go on to what are my next steps to make it faster and faster and faster. Not going that far. We're just going to start with the very first thing today. Okay, let's talk about vibrato. Vibrato is purple. I'm going to do this for you. Vibrato. And once I get to the end of these notes, if you're watching this, take a screenshot, and this will be your notes. You don't even have to write it down. And this is going to be stability. Stability is reliable notes. Stability, vibrato. Okay. We're going to go into vibrato. Now, this is going to happen. Vibrato happens in different places. It happens when we hold a note a lot, because when we hold a note out, the vocal muscle backs off, and that note gets weak, has more chance to get weak. That's why it tends to happen on hold notes. I'm going to have to fake a big wide vibrato, because I've been working on controlling mine for so long, doing it the opposite way gets a little difficult for me. So if you don't vibrato in these places, and this isn't your problem, that's okay, because like I said, it just depends the condition of your vocal muscle and how much bad information is in your database, where and how that's going to happen, to what extent. So if I were me and I had a problem with vibrato, and I would circle where that's happening, and then I would make these notes. So I'm going to fake vibrato in some places it's likely to happen, and then I'm going to work with that. But for you, you find where it's happening for you. If you've got a vibrato at all, and most people do, the ones that don't, again, is because muscle. I had trouble getting vibrato because I have thick vocal cords. That means it's more fun to do this. Squeeze that sucker. So if you have just a little bit of vibrato, practice this. And the tip I'm going to give you in the vocal quick win tip today, I'm going to try to go fast so we can get to the end here, guys. In the vocal quick win tip, I'm going to give you an exercise that you can do to physically make that muscle do what you're asking it to do, to test asking your muscle and having it respond and feeling that, okay? But when you go through a song, you need to circle where yours is happening and then apply what I'm doing, okay? You were the word at the beginning. Let's say it happens there. It usually happens at the end. What? Well, let's say it's going to happen on high, because it's got an H at the end, and this bugger will make it really, again, what does an H do? Whoa. And if you have good chord closure and you get to the end and you start easing up, then that vibrato is going to come out right away as soon as you start easing up. This might happen to some of you as you turning the dial down on vibrato. The dial down on volume. Like I said, when you turn the volume down, the muscle holds, but it has to let up just a little bit. For some of you, that's going to cause a vibrato where you haven't heard it before. And then I'll show you how to control it. Okay. You were the Word at the beginning, one with God, the Lord Most High. Because this has an H, guess what? Vibrato wants to show up right away. We've got a vibrato high. You already have the answer for how we're going to get this taken care of. I've already given it to you in the first part of stability. Because what does vibrato need to disappear? If our vocal muscles are just barely touching so it can vibrato, what do we need? We need to hold it taut. We need the muscle to squeeze. Guess what we needed for stability? We needed the muscle to go from H to this. We needed a good, nice muscle squeeze. We need the same thing to control a vibrato. So we cannot end this on H. H is our enemy. Ba, 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 ba. What do we have? We starts with an H. Oh my goodness. What are we going to do? I don't know. You got any ideas? I don't. I'm out of ideas. Okay. Thank you. Glad that made sense to you. Made sense to me too. All I ever wanted in my life was learn how to sing better, faster. That's why I spent tens of thousands of dollars. I was so bummed that didn't do it. Okay. One with God, the Lord Most High. The H at the beginning is making your muscle back off. The H at the end is making it back off more. It is setting you up for failure. So you say, Again, understanding how the vocal muscle works is crucial. Understanding that the vocal muscle won't do even what it can until the brain searches its database and tells it what to do is super crucial too, because you're like, now that's not my fault. I don't have a horrible, uncontrollable vibrato, regardless if I'm 89 or I'm 22. I don't have that problem. The problem is the H. We got to get the H out of there. What is left that we can get the chords to close on? And if you were one of my students, I'd go into the four types of chord closure because it makes it super easy to identify these, but we're not gonna for time. So one with God, the Lord Most High. Well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, what do we need? We know the reason it's falling apart is because we don't have vocal muscle together. It's undermining us. What do we need? We need to find a place to get that vocal muscle back. It's like stepping on the gas a little bit more. I have one right before all these H's. Let's see what happens if I will step on the 1 to get gas for the phrase, and I'm going to step on the M a little bit extra, what I think is over the top usually, and see if it will hold my vibrato since we've again closed those chords, squeezed that muscle. One with God, the Lord Most High. It'll still want to do it at the end. And if that's effective and appropriate for your congregation, then no problem. People will be like, you're so pretty. That's what happens. Even guys, yes, you got beautiful voice. Beautiful is not really a manly term either, but it works much better than pretty. So I say, okay, well, we got to start here because at the beginning, it didn't go, my vibrato no longer went like this. It went like, gotta get my eraser. It went like this. So that's better. That's progress. Guess what? We still have something at the end that's not giving enough muscle to keep that stable. So guess what? I'm going to take this I, and I'm going to put it up here and I'm going to say, this is not a word. It's not high. It's I. Now, again, we practice with the I so that the vocal muscle can learn the habit of approaching that note with that amount of muscle. That's really important. No, you're not going to sing the Lord Most I. That would be weird. Okay. But once you've practiced that and you feel like you can get into that sound, and it is a totally different function of the muscle than everybody else tells you to use. Therefore, it's hard. It's not your fault. It's not your voice's fault. It's what everybody has ever told you to do with your voice that's in your database. One with God, the Lord Most High. Now, maybe I find that clunky, but I want to try to give my voice, my vocal muscle 2 times the chances to feel what it is for that vocal muscle to squeeze where it automatically lets go. We want our muscle to have repetition so that it knows how to do what we're asking it to. We want the repetition so that our brain says, what, are we going to add this to our database, or is this something you did once, right? So it's going to be clunky when you practice it. That's why practice is different than singing in front of people. Then you're going to find out which one is going to be the most valuable to you to sing. One with God, the Lord Most High. This one usually is. It's usually the one where around the H's, the last one of the sound. So I'll put a little creak and a little cry. If you've learned anything about speech-based methods, you've heard creak, cry, those fry, those kind of things. And they are terms that explain how to make a sound. But again, I have to just caution you because I had to learn this the hard way. Not all terms mean the same thing just because someone puts the word down. And some people think it's a solution for everything everywhere. It's not. This is your vocal anatomy. This is a very, very complex machine. You cannot find a quick tip that works for every song and every note, and it's not your fault when it doesn't work. It's the solution, quote, somebody has given you that is not capable of solving the problem, okay? So that's why I go through a song to show you how it applies. It's different in every song, and it's different in every key because of what shape your voice is in, and when we talked about where the muscles trade off in episode 2, okay? Your hidden glory and creation. If we'll put an H in shun, well, that's TH. If we put a H in there, instability, therefore wobbly vibrato. You see why we did these two together? They need the same thing. The problem is instability for overactive vibrato and notes falling apart. The solution is chord closure. All that means is not the chords closing, because the chords can do nothing on their own, their eyelashes, but the vocal muscle doing what it needs to squeeze those chords together to resist the airflow so that it can make a solid, stable sound. So creation, we're just going to make this, see, there's tips to do everything. Because we're going down, I would make this light, 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 heavy, 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 and I would press into shun. Creation. It's really easy for the brain to get that. That's why I would do that there. Notes go down. It's easy to get heavy in them. The lower notes are, the easier it is to get heavy in them. And by heavy, I mean vocal muscle. Creation. And when all else fails, if you feel that warbly vibrato coming out, stop the note. Don't hang on to it, even if you're supposed to. Okay. The worst thing in worship is a bad blend. Bad blend happens when vibrato gets out of control, happens where it's not supposed to. If you had a directive from your worship leader or your song director, your choir leader, not to make any sounds, any term he uses that makes you think of vibrato shouldn't happen there, then it's better to get off of that note. Creation, press in here, and then cut it off. If you can press in, hold it, and not have the vibrato take over, that's fine. If you have, especially in a choir, understand that a choir director's job is not to make you sing better. A choir director's job is to get a mass sound that is similar from all of the participants. You will not get advice in a choir, I'm sorry, even if they have a degree, because I'm still retraining singers that have degrees. You will not get information, especially from a group trainer, that will help you vocally personally, and everything they give you is to apply to the group sound, not for your voice specifically. If you think about it that way, you'll protect yourself from a lot of bad habits that will, again, add more wrenches into the system. Okay, so cut it off if you have to, because it doesn't mess with the blend. If you can get it solid, then go ahead and hold it. Now revealed to you are Christ. Now we don't have a problem vibratoing here. Why? Now revealed to you are Christ. What a beautiful name it is. Guess what? You may find that this line, if you can get this strong, the next line, you don't even have to worry about this W. Now, if I've been practicing a while, this is my first notes, I might go ahead and erase that note because I don't need to worry about that anymore because I'm holding this out and I don't have a problem. When that problem disappears, that's why I like erasable pens. These are Frixion, by the way. You can get them anywhere, but it's Frixion is the only brand that has true erasable pens. Thank you. Now revealed to you are Christ, what a beautiful name it is. But I like to always, just because, even if I'm just in mid-sentence, press into that. Why? Now we get to styling, dynamics. We always want, there's a reason I told you in the last episode why I write lyrics the way I do. You'll notice that my chorus is in bold and my verses are in standard. This is because visually when I look at that, I automatically sing bigger. It's a visual cue. When it's bold, it's bigger. When it's bigger, it's more. What does your brain think more is when it's talking to the vocal muscle? It tells the muscle to engage. Okay? Choruses are bigger. If I make it bold, I don't even have to think about it. I'm automatically going to sing it bigger just by knowing visually this cue that it's bold. It's another vocal quick tip too. What a beautiful name it is. What a beautiful name it is. And the more of these lines you can string together, the more power you'll have throughout. If you're going, you're like, oh yeah, that worked, but now I'm in church and I'm a little bit nervous, you're going to find your vocal muscle will always back off a little bit when you're in front of people. So when you rehearse these things on your own, you go over the top. Always go over the top. Make sure you can do it over the top. Just say, if I back down 3 levels from where my voice is doing it now, will this disappear? Because that's what's going to happen when nerves set in. Even if you're a great singer, something distracts you, that makes you nervous, sets you, you can't remember where you are in your lyrics, it'll undermine your stability. That's why having a muscle that's trained and controlled and flexible is the answer for that, because it's so solid and it knows what it's doing. It won't let go because it's trained like a good dog. I have a service dog, a mobility dog, and he's very well trained. And I'm like, so easy because he's trained, right? Same thing with muscle. If I go, now reveal to us our Christ, what a beautiful name it is, what a beautiful name it is, the name of Jesus Christ, my King. When you guys start practicing these 2 things, and if you overdo it, like I said, so that you're retraining not only your brain, this new habit, but the muscle that you really mean it, you really want it to do that there. By overdoing it, you're saying, yes, that awkward sound, I mean it, right? When you do this, you're going to find all of a sudden you're not as short of breath. You don't need to breathe a lot. And you're like, man, I have no problem. I can sing 3 more lines. And then you'll find out in the middle of one you can't, usually because an H sneaks in. Okay. But the more of those you can sing, and because it keeps my stability as a leader, well, even when I'm on team, I will sing, a good 4 lines together because I can, not because I'm great, not because I have breath support. By the way, I have damaged lungs since my sepsis. I can still do it because it doesn't rely on my lungs. It relies on the vocal muscle. If my vocal muscle can do it and my brain knows that it's the only thing it needs to draw up, then these will be easy. Now, everyone else is going to breathe, and I don't want to be the one voice hanging out because that's embarrassing too. I will literally turn down the volume to barely inaudible and I'll pull back from my mic, but I will keep that note going. Why? Because it's easier and it's honestly more fun to sing. So I achieve the goal of the group by turning down the volume on my own voice, pulling away from the mic so no one hears it. It's not bugging anyone else. But I maintain the power of that muscle by going as far as I can. Play with that at home. It's super, super fun. One more verse and we're moving on. Okay. You didn't want heaven, right? No H. Now we're doing the red part. Fine. So you didn't want heaven without us. If we put an H here, it will do this. If we do you, this is supposed to be an S. If we do us, then we have that. Without us. I had a little vibrato and then I recontrolled it. Did you hear that? It tried to do it without me because I backed off so much. See, here's the thing. Vocal muscle will try to give you what you tell it to give you. But sometimes it's like, I'm not sure what you asked me to do. So you go, okay, let me tell you again. No problem. It's not part of my soul that's wrong. Not that Jesus didn't give me the right talent. Without us. Sometimes when you have a note that steps down like that, you'll find that vibrato uses that cue to go, us, because the note is already moving, right? If I found that is a weakness, I would say without, I would let everybody else sing, and I would come back in on the us. Now I'm getting too detailed, okay? But not hus. We never have an H. Without us. So Jesus, you brought heaven down. Down. D is too short. I would press into that and I would say that. Why did I put that in purple and not in red? Because I don't need that to have stability in that line, but I need that to control my vibrato. This is not always necessary, but it is extremely valuable, I find, to use a couple different colors, not like 10, but a couple different colors when you're troubleshooting. Like I did a key. I said, these are my stability notes. This is my vibrato notes. So when I go back and I say, I want a clean copy, now I'm going to just make notes for rehearsal. By the way, I don't use these when I'm performing because at rehearsal, I'm taking my revised copy and my brain is just memorizing where those things are. And then you go sing and you do what we did in episode 3, I think, and 2. We talked about when you let it go and you let God and what that means vocally. Okay. So Jesus, you brought heaven down. Press into this. That will help, okay? My sin was great, your love was great. It is not great. That goes like this. It is, I'm sorry, I should write it this way so you can read your notes. It's not A-H, it's a. It's a. There. Your love was greater. Now, people will say, when I actually have come in to teach a white choir how to sing with soul, so much fun. So if you're singing contemporary worship, you don't want greater. And if you have a lot of people doing that, it's because they've probably had some classical information, and that was meant for people in the 1800s. I'm just cutting to the quick. Classical music was not meant. It is a style, by the way. When you look at the anatomy, the brain, and then you look at all singing instruction and you divide it by what we know the body does or doesn't do, how the body does and doesn't work, then we know that classical is no different than rock or ska or worship. It is a type of music that got a bunch of styling rules thrown in with technique to make a certain sound. No one but me separates the technique from the styling because they all teach everything that kind of affects both, and they don't know that it anatomically is different. If you understand that it is different, it gives you great power to sing all kinds of music. So if you're singers that want to go greater and they're hanging on to that to stabilize it, it's and there's a teeny little R only when you lift off of the sound. Greater. The R comes in when you lift off. If you will start getting people in the habit of doing that, it will be like, what? We got contemporary. What happened to us? What could separate us now? Now is not usually going to go in vibrato because we go back into there. But I'm hoping that, let me know in the comments if that makes sense, if that gives you some ideas how you're going to mark things. And I'm going to move this up a little bit so that, let's see if I can make that straighter. Straighter. If you want to take a screenshot of that, it might be a little bit easier to see those notes. All right. Now, what are we going to do about getting that voice stabilized in our last few minutes together and making sure that we can feel it? Feeling it is crucial. We're going to go to our vocal quick win tip. Da-da-da-da. Yeah. Vocal quick win tip. All right. Okay. We're going to stabilize notes, give you a way to feel that, and stabilize that vibrato, because I've just showed you that it has the same problem and it has the same solution. And you notice on that sheet, I wrote UGH a few times. I want you to think as in umbrella. Umbrella. It's not has an H at the end. But if I put UG, people go ugh. That's the only reason it has an H, so we can understand. So umbrella, umbrella. That's your sound. Go around, annoy the person you're stuck at home with right now with that sound. Umbrella. Okay. Why? Won't help your voice. It's just fun. We'll make it more familiar though. Okay. We're going to say Now, when we put this into music, it tends to go It's not that. Umbrella. Umbrella. If you want to, if you're not sure, if it gets harder than it should, look in the mirror and say and then sing the part that you think sounds hard. And then you'll notice that these muscles in here are C shapes. They are not at any point necessary for making sound. They're not in the vocal machine. But because sound comes out our mouth, if we get these going the wrong way, they will make it harder for us to sing. Don't have time to get into that. So whenever happens, we have other problems. So your reference is umbrella. Okay. You're going to go on any note. It does not matter what note you do this on. Matter of fact, if you'll just pick a note that you feel is comfortable, guess what your brain does? If you find yourself singing in the wrong key sometimes, I've got video of a student doing this who wasn't a singer. And then his wife was training with me and he said, "Do you think I could sing?" I'm like, yes. And so I put him through this session and I'm going to show it sometime in a video. But he can sing. He was singing Queen. He could sing it fine. But as soon as we put the music on, he could not sing it in that key. And he's like, well, maybe I just can't. And I'm like, no. Here's what happens when you sing in the wrong key. When you start, your brain has got all of this database of things you have to do to sing right? And then it's got to funnel how to give that information to your vocal anatomy so that it will do what it can. But because you failed in different areas, your brain is going to say, if you don't have any place you're supposed to start, like music isn't starting, you don't have a note to start on, it will automatically pick a note that is most comfortable for you where you're at vocally. Did you know that? So when you sing in the wrong key, it's because your brain says, I want to make you successful. My job here is to make sure you're not embarrassed. So start here because I got your back here. Anywhere else, it's a crapshoot, right? So that's why we'll sometimes start singing in the wrong key. So when you do this exercise, sing in any key that comes to your brain is smart. It's going to pick the best, most comfortable place for you. Once you've done it in some comfortable places, try to pick some uncomfortable places and try it, okay? All right, we're going to pick any easy note, and we're going to start that with a little whine because we can't go on a note or it goes away. The higher you are, the tinier that whine gets. Any note you pick, you start with that little creak or that little whine, and then the goal is to hold it. You're going to hold it. See how long you can hold it out, okay? Doesn't have to be loud. Volume is different from power. When that fades away, and if it goes into vibrato, will be determined by when H sneaks in there and undermines you. You'll notice because it'll go, you'll actually hear and feel the instability, okay? Now make sure doesn't happen. It's umbrella. You got an umbrella, you're standing on the floor right in front of you, and you're looking at your umbrella and going, okay? You don't have to hold it forever. That's not the goal of anything. But starting it with that little creak or cry, it's just a little squeeze with the muscles, what we're doing. Then you're going to hold those notes as long as you can. And when you hear the H, that's the beginning of the end, okay? You get an idea for how much muscle you have and if your brain will accept that new information. The first step beyond erasing the database and getting the right information in the database of the brain about how to sing is to get your vocal anatomy to feel what the new information does. Someone can tell you to feel it in the mask, but tell me how you put that in a way that you feel it. I have asked so many big vocal coaches, what does it feel like? Well, it's kind of round. Some people say it's triangular. Some people say it's a color. I'm like, well, I can't, how do I grab onto that? It's just because of what they're basing all their teaching on doesn't allow for any of that information. What I've learned in my very, very, very hard road down the anatomical path of the voice is that you can feel it. You can give your voice a directive. You can feel it in your voice. And once you feel it, it gives a secondary, much more powerful training back to your database. So when your database tells your voice, do this, it remembers the feeling and it can bring it up. But if you say, feel it in the mask, make the sound round, your anatomy goes, yeah, how did we do that? How did we get there? But if you go, umbrella, because you remember what it feels like. If you have vibrato, it will show up. And it should show up when you want to. It's a styling tool. Vibrato, once your database gives the right information, your vocal muscle is able to do what it needs to do. Sometimes our vocal muscle, honestly, has gotten very uncoordinated, not usually weak, sometimes weak because of medical things, because of not talking for a long time. We've all been home and not talking as much as we probably do at the office. Vocal muscle weakens just like any other muscle in your body. So if your vocal muscle even is strong, but it's uncoordinated, it will have problems getting vibrato to do what it wants when it wants. Now, I've given you a tip during our working on the song time, what to do when you're in that song and it starts to back off and get warbly. Cut that sucker off. No one will even know, promise. And when you can feel what your voice needs to do, the brain tells the anatomy remembers the feeling. And as soon as the anatomy starts, I cannot explain it until you've felt it yourself, but every singer I've worked with has, so I know it's real. It's this super split second you're going, this is going to come out wrong. That's not the feeling. And it recorrects on a dime. And before the sound comes out of your mouth, it's corrected. Even though you knew it was not starting. It was like, I can't remember. Yes. and it clicks in. It's crazy powerful. So I want you to know your voice is capable of that. Don't blame your voice. It's not your voice's problem. It's all the stuff in the database. We do not have hundreds of thousands of people to sing to. And I've done that. It was cool, but it's easy. Singing in front of one person is the most difficult audience ever. So never feel bad because you have a hard time singing in a smaller church. It is the hardest place to sing. And besides that, worship singers get to sing for the ultimate audience because we don't sing for the approval of people. We sing for the maker of your unique voice. He created it. He knows the potential of it. And can you imagine the smile on his face when he sees you starting to unlock the things? It's kind of like unwrapping little bits of the present you didn't even know were there. And he's kind of like going, yeah, I made that for you. It's so cool. We're going to cover vocal power. Now that we've got some stability has to come first. And everything you've learned in this episode is going to set the stage for how we take that muscle and we add all of you, thank you so much. I love worship singers. I want to serve you. You are a singer. You were created to be. You have so much potential that science hasn't even tested now, but I've tested it in hundreds of voices. And I feel like if I can do one thing that helps one singer, although I'd rather it be every singer on the face of the planet at the time that I'm alive and afterwards, to get one step closer to that, think of the impact that will make in our church. Think about how much more we can enjoy our naked worship in episode 1. It's a blessing to have gone through my struggles only so that I can hopefully give you some stuff that will help you start to uncover and take a peek at what God really has for you in your voice. Thank you so much for watching this series and catch up on all the ones you haven't seen because they all build off each other. Okay, see you guys. Bye.